Hey everyone. Welcome to the channel. You're about to dive into something epic, so buckle up. Rocket today, we've got an incredible one planet against the storm Earth's battle for survival that will blow your mind. But before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of the exciting content coming your way. Let's jump right in. Earth's battle for survival. The silence of space was vast and unbroken, a dark expanse stretching far beyond the reach of Earth's telescopes. For millions of years, the universe had remained a cold, indifferent observer to the chaotic developments of the young human race. Earth had sent its rockets into space, its probes into distant worlds, its dreams reaching further into the stars. But in the quiet reaches of space, something far older, far more ruthless, watched Earth with predatory eyes. The Zakarith, a cold, metal-clad species whose empire spanned across hundreds of star systems, had been searching for the next planet to conquer. Their thirst for expansion, their need for subjugation, had driven them to every corner of the galaxy. They were relentless, methodical, and utterly unstoppable in their quest to dominate. And Earth had just become their next target. It was a clear, calm evening over the eastern coast of the United States. A group of astronomers, working out of the Shawnee Observatory in West Virginia, had been tracking a strange anomaly in the night sky. They had initially assumed it was an asteroid or perhaps a comet on an unusual trajectory. But when the object began to change speed and direction in ways that defied any natural explanation, they knew something was terribly wrong. Dr. Evelyn Collins, the lead scientist at Shawnee, sat at the observation console, her eyes glued to the screen. The flashing readings were erratic, the trajectory impossible. The object wasn't following the predictable path of any comet or meteor, it was moving purposefully, almost intelligently. It was coming toward Earth. Dr. Collins, you need to see this, one of her assistants, Marco, called out from the back of the room. She rushed over, her heart pounding in her chest. She had studied the night sky for over a decade, but nothing in her career had prepared her for this. On the screen, the object was now growing larger, faster than any object should be able to move through the atmosphere. What the hell is it? Marco whispered, almost as if he were afraid of the answer. Dr. Collins shook her head, her mouth dry. I don't know, Marco. But I think it's about to make contact. By the time the first reports reached global leaders, the situation had already spiraled out of control. Communications were being disrupted across the globe. News outlets struggled to keep up with the rapid developments. The object in the sky had expanded into a fleet. Hundreds of ships, massive in size, their shapes unlike anything seen before. General Samuel Drayton, a hardened military strategist, had been called to a high-security meeting at the United Nations Security Council as soon as the first reports came through. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them comforting. He had trained for situations like this. He had prepared contingency plans for a multitude of threats, asteroid impacts, global pandemics, nuclear strikes. But nothing had prepared him for an alien invasion. The room was filled with hushed voices as the leaders of the world's greatest powers gathered around the conference table, their faces pale. We've got no idea what we're dealing with, said Vice President William Davis, his voice tight with stress. There are no communications from the objects. No signs of anything we've ever encountered before. General Drayton leaned forward, his stern face set in a grim line. I've been following the initial reports. These ships are large, and they're not slowing down. We need to prepare for the worst. Now. But before any further plans could be made, an interruption came. The room's lights flickered, then shut off completely. Emergency lights blinked to life, bathing the conference table in red. One of the technicians outside rushed in, her face flushed with panic. It's happening now. The satellites are being shut down one by one. Every system we rely on for communication is going dark. What do you mean, Shut down? Drayton asked sharply. The technician swallowed hard. It's not just our satellites, General. We've lost contact with military command. It's like they're intentionally blocking us. Every military installation is offline. It's as if we don't exist to them. While Earth's leaders scrambled to comprehend the full scale of the threat, the Zakarith fleet had already entered Earth's atmosphere. The lead ship, the Titan of Stars, was a massive construct, more akin to a fortress than a vessel. Its hull gleamed with an unnatural sheen, dark and smooth, reflecting no light, yet absorbing all sound in a haunting silence. Commander Karnok, leader of the Zakarith fleet, stood at the helm of the Titan, surveying the scene before him. His cold, metal face was an expressionless mask, his mind calculating the next steps with ruthless efficiency. The Zakarith had conquered countless worlds before, and the process was always the same, an initial show of force, overwhelming firepower that shattered any resistance, followed by a brutal occupation. Earth would be no different. It was a world ripe for the taking, unsuspecting, technologically behind, but ripe with resources. The Zakarith saw it as a perfect addition to their expanding empire. Activate the shockwave, Karnok commanded, his voice metallic and harsh, like the scraping of iron. His second in command, General Zalzar, stood at attention beside him. It will be done, Commander, Zalzar replied, his voice void of emotion. A low hum vibrated through the ship's interior as the shockwave generators powered up. The Zakarith had perfected a weapon that could obliterate cities in an instant. The energy blast was designed to incapacitate any resistance Earth might put up and leave the planet in a state of chaos. Karnok's gaze never wavered from the planet below, his thoughts cold and calculating. He had seen entire civilizations reduced to rubble. Earth would be no different. On the surface of Earth, chaos erupted as the first Zakarith blasts rained down. Cities around the world were plunged into darkness as their power grids were destroyed in seconds. The world's leaders, now fully aware of the magnitude of the invasion, scrambled to mount a response, but it was too late. No missile, no fighter jet, and no defense system could even make a dent in the Zakarith fleet. In New York City, the first blast struck the heart of the financial district. Buildings collapsed, the streets were torn apart, and flames erupted into the sky. The Zakarith were not just here to conquer, they were here to destroy. Their initial strikes were designed to break the human spirit, to show them that no matter how hard they fought, it would be pointless. General Drayton, watching the devastation unfold on a global monitor, clenched his fists. His mind raced, struggling to formulate a plan, but it seemed futile. Every military installation, every radar system, and every communication channel was under siege. "We've got nothing," Drayton muttered under his breath. "This is not a war we can win." But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, something extraordinary began to happen. Across the world, ordinary people, civilians, soldiers, engineers, and scientists refused to give up. They refused to accept that they were powerless. In Tokyo, a team of engineers scrambled to hack into the invaders' communication network. In Moscow, retired military officers who had served in the Cold War days rallied local defense forces, organizing underground resistance units. Even in the midst of destruction, humanity's refusal to bow down to invaders burned bright. Dr. Collins, working in a hidden underground lab with Ray Tanaka, one of Earth's top military strategists, realized that the key to humanity's survival lay not in brute force, but in something else. She began to analyze the technology left behind from downed Zakarith drones, searching for any weakness, anything that could be exploited. "There has to be something," she murmured to herself, feverishly working. "There's always a way. We just need to find it." Hours passed, and as the Zakarith fleet loomed overhead, it seemed that Earth's fate was sealed. But in the darkest moment, a glimmer of hope emerged. Dr. Collins and Ray Tanaka had discovered something, a weakness in the Zakarith's shields, a frequency they could exploit with an electromagnetic pulse, EMP. "There's a chance," Dr. Collins said, looking up from the data she had just decoded. "We can strike back." And in that moment, a rallying cry went up from Earth's defenders. Against impossible odds, humanity would make its stand. They would fight, not just to survive, but to show the galaxy that Earth could not be crushed. No matter how unstoppable the invaders seemed, Earth had one weapon the Zakarith could never understand: human resilience. Earth's response had been pitiful in the face of the Zakarith's overwhelming technological superiority. For every missile launched, the Zakarith destroyed 5 more in retaliation. Their ships moved effortlessly through Earth's atmosphere, sending shock waves across continents with their energy blasts. Entire cities vanished in an instant. Yet, as humanity began to experience its first true taste of what it meant to be weak, something stirred within them: a survival instinct, a refusal to surrender. They had nothing to lose. Dr. Evelyn Collins, a brilliant physicist working at one of Earth's top research facilities, watched the devastation unfold from a hidden underground lab. She wasn't a military strategist, nor a leader, but she was a scientist. And she could see what others could not. "Their power source is not infinite," she murmured to herself. She rushed to the lab's command center, where a team of engineers and military officers were working to analyze the wreckage from a downed Zakarith drone. "Dr. Collins, you're back," said Ray Tanaka, a seasoned military officer who had become a vital part of Earth's resistance effort. He knew there was little chance of victory, but he also knew Earth couldn't simply lie down and die. "We can fight them," Dr. Collins said with a fierce determination that caught everyone off guard. "Their technology is advanced, but it's not perfect. We have to find a weakness in their systems. And I think I know where to start." Dr. Collins and Ray Tanaka assembled a small team of the best minds left on Earth: military engineers, mathematicians, and a handful of brave soldiers. They worked day and night, going through every piece of Zakarith technology they could find. Eventually, they stumbled upon something. The Zakarith ships, despite their advanced energy shields and devastating weapons, had a glaring weakness. "There's a frequency," Dr. Collins said, eyes wide with excitement, "a frequency embedded in their shields that's vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses. A well-timed EMP could disrupt their power systems for a critical amount of time. Not long enough to destroy them, but long enough to cripple their response. If we can exploit this, we could throw them off balance." Ray Tanaka finished for her, his face lighting up with a glimmer of hope. "This could work. It's our best shot." The plan was daring, but it was humanity's last chance. The team moved quickly to modify Earth's existing space weapons to deliver an EMP pulse that would disable the Zakarith fleet's shielding systems. As the Resistance built its plans, a surprising turn of events unfolded. The Zakarith had not only conquered worlds, they had annihilated entire civilizations that had once been prosperous. But one planet, the Kirillans, had managed to escape the Zakarith's wrath. The Kirillans, a peaceful yet technologically advanced species, had fled to Earth's system after narrowly escaping a Zakarith attack. The Kirillans brought with them invaluable intelligence on Zakarith fleet systems, including secret codes and methods to hack into their communication networks. Ashavalon, the Kirillan envoy, was determined to help Earth, despite the inherent risk. "We can assist you," Asha told Dr. Collins and Ray Tanaka. "But only if you promise me one thing. We can't allow Earth to become another Zakarith world." The Zakarith fleet had encircled Earth's last stronghold, Fort Phoenix, a massive underground military base located in the American Rockies. It was Earth's final line of defense, and the Resistance had poured every last resource into defending it. As the Zakarith ships descended, humanity made its move. Dr. Collins and Tanaka's modified EMP weapon, designed to be fired from a hidden launch site deep beneath Earth's surface, was ready. The weapon was massive, an enormous cannon powered by a fusion reactor, designed to release an electromagnetic pulse capable of scrambling the Zakarith fleet's shields for a precious few minutes. As the Zakarith launched their final offensive, the weapon fired. A brilliant, blinding wave of energy shot toward the sky, colliding with the invaders' fleet. The pulse hit the Zakarith ships with devastating effect. Their shields faltered, flickered, and collapsed in an instant. The Zakarith fleet was stunned, their once impenetrable defenses now vulnerable. "Now's our chance," Tanaka yelled over the comms. The human fleet, a coalition of military fighters, scrambled from their underground hangars and launched their final assault. The world held its breath. It had been 2 days since Earth's final hope had ignited, the EMP weapon, a device designed to exploit a critical vulnerability in the Zakarith's shield technology, had been deployed. The moment it activated, the vast Zakarith fleet, which had been looming overhead with terrifying silence, experienced a flicker of disruption. It was enough. A fleeting moment where the invincible seemed vulnerable. In that instant, humanity had made its decision. General Samuel Drayton, the reluctant hero, had ordered every remaining fighter, every last tank and soldier, to launch an assault against the invaders. Earth's survival would depend on the next few hours. At Fort Phoenix, Earth's last defense base, preparations were underway. A group of fighter pilots gathered, their faces set in grim determination. They were the best humanity had left, soldiers who had lived through hell, fighting against impossible odds, now facing their greatest battle. Inside the command center of Fort Phoenix, the heavy hum of equipment filled the air. Holographic displays flickered across the walls, displaying live feeds from various parts of the planet. General Drayton stood before a large tactical map, his hands clasped behind his back, his posture tense. His eyes, however, betrayed a quiet, unspoken fear. It wasn't the fear of losing, it was the weight of knowing the responsibility had fallen on his shoulders. Beside him, Dr. Evelyn Collins, the physicist who had helped develop the EMP weapon, reviewed the final reports. Her eyes were bloodshot from days of sleepless work, but her mind was sharp as ever. "The EMP did its job," she said quietly, her fingers brushing over the holographic interface. "Zakarith shields are down. This is our chance." Drayton nodded, but his mind raced. "We've only got a short window. The EMP won't last long before their backup systems kick in. We've got maybe 30 minutes before they adapt." "Less," said Tanaka, the seasoned strategist who had worked alongside Drayton and Dr. Collins to organize the defense. He turned from the control console, his face hard. "Once their fleet recalibrates, we're back to square one. This is a one-shot deal." Drayton exhaled sharply. "So it's all or nothing." "We don't have a choice," Tanaka replied. He glanced at the fighters assembling just beyond the command center, preparing to take off. "The Air Force has been restructured. The pilots are ready, but we need to move now." The command to launch was given. Outside Fort Phoenix, the remnants of humanity's Air Force scrambling, patched together forces from every corner of the world rose from the ground in a flurry of dust and engines. The fighters, a mix of older models and makeshift adaptations, took off in tight formations, slicing through the air toward the heavens. A chorus of engines roared into the sky, the remaining pilots ready to stake their lives on one final mission. Among them was Captain Lucas Hayes, the leader of the fighters. His face was set in grim resolve. Like the rest of them, he knew the stakes. His fighter, a battered F-22 with a homemade EMP charge attached to the underside, streaked into the sky, joining the other planes as they climbed towards the Zakarith fleet. "Target, Titan of Stars," Hayes commanded, his voice calm but with a sharp edge that indicated the severity of the moment. In the command center, Drayton's gaze never wavered from the screens in front of him. His fingers tapped restlessly on the console. "Make sure they hit the core systems. That's where the EMP charge will do the most damage." The Titan of Stars, the flagship of the Zakarith, was surrounded by countless smaller ships, each one radiating menace. The colossal ship's dark surface seemed to absorb the very light around it. From the planet below, it was an oppressive force in the sky, looming like a god, seemingly untouchable. "Captain Hayes," Drayton spoke into the communicator. "When you're close enough, detonate the EMP. Give them everything you've got." "Acknowledged," Hayes replied, his voice steady. For Earth. The fighters closed in on the Zakarith fleet, and the tension was palpable. Every second felt like an eternity. The distance between Earth and the invaders seemed impossible to cross, yet here they were. Humanity's last stand. The first fighter broke through the outer layer of Zakarith defensive ships, weaving in and out with incredible speed. A hail of laser fire streaked past as the Zakarith retaliated. Explosions lit up the darkness as the fighters began to engage in a chaotic, high-stakes dogfight. break off," yelled one of the pilots over the comms as they narrowly avoided a barrage of Zakarith lasers. But the battle was far from one-sided. Earth's pilots had learned to adapt in ways that the Zakarith hadn't anticipated. They had no experience fighting these humans, these survivors who refused to go down without a fight. Captain Hayes locked onto his target, a massive Zakarith destroyer, one of the outermost ships in the Titan's defensive perimeter. With precision and skill, he launched a volley of missiles that struck the destroyer, causing a violent explosion. The Zakarith ship shuddered, its shields flickering as it began to break apart. "Nice shot, Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Anna Voss, one of Hayes' wingmen. But there was no time for celebration. Zakarith ships retaliated instantly. The remaining fighters weaved through a storm of lasers and missiles, dodging with expert precision. One fighter after another was struck, and Earth's pilots began to fall. The Zakarith were relentless. Hayes gritted his teeth, his knuckles tight on the controls. He looked down at the blinking lights on his HUD. His EMP charge was now in range. This was the moment of truth. "Prepare for EMP detonation," he said firmly. The Zakarith fleet was closing in. From their perspective, Earth was a planet that was already as good as conquered. They had underestimated the resolve of humanity, the ferocity with which Earth's fighters attacked. And now, as the fighters broke through the final line of defense, their target was visible. The Titan of Stars, the heart of the Zakarith fleet, loomed ahead. The fighters streaked forward in unison, their engines screaming as they closed in on their target. The EMP charges, already primed, were ready for deployment. Captain Hayes was the first to break through the atmosphere, now mere kilometers from the massive flagship. Hayes pushed his fighter toward the heart of the Titan. His mind focused on nothing but the task at hand. He spoke into his comms, "This is it. Detonating in 3, 2, 1. The EMP pulse detonated with a deafening boom, cascading outward like a massive shock wave. The entire fleet shuddered, and the lights aboard the Zakarith ships flickered violently. The massive shields protecting the ships once impenetrable collapsed. For a brief moment, the Zakarith were left defenseless. The fighters didn't wait to see the aftermath. They opened fire on the Zakarith, attacking with everything they had. Lasers, missiles, and bombs rained down upon the fleet. The chaos of battle reached a fever pitch as explosions lit up the once impenetrable defenses. Zakarith ships began to fall, one by one. Back at Fort Phoenix, Drayton watched as the live feed showed the battle unfold above. His heart raced as the EMP pulse had done its job. The shields had fallen. But Earth's forces were still vastly outnumbered, and the Zakarith were not so easily defeated. "More incoming!" Tanaka shouted. "They're regrouping. It won't be long before their counterattack hits." Drayton's eyes flicked to the screens as the Zakarith began to reorient their forces. More ships emerged from the depths of space, reinforcements arriving too quickly. The tide of battle had shifted again, but humanity was not about to surrender. "Tell the fighters to focus on the flagship. If we take down the Titan, we can turn this around," Drayton barked. "Do whatever it takes. Hayes and his squadron pushed forward, determined to finish the mission. But just as they were closing in on the Titan, a massive energy pulse erupted from the flagship. A direct hit to the lead fighter sent it spinning into space, and another plummeted toward Earth. The Zakarith weren't finished, they were retaliating with everything they had left. Desperation hung in the air. The battle seemed like it could go either way. Humanity's numbers were dwindling, but they had one thing the Zakarith couldn't anticipate: heart. In the final moments, General Drayton activated a series of emergency beacons, rallying the remaining forces from around the globe. Soldiers, engineers, and civilians who had been waiting for this moment gathered under the banner of humanity's survival. Earth's resistance was united now, in their final stand. And as the Titan of stars loomed closer to Earth, ready to deliver the final blow, humanity launched its last, desperate attack. The battle raged on. The outcome was still uncertain. But humanity was no longer the underdog. The fight for Earth had become a fight for survival, a fight for existence. The final assault was just beginning. Earth's resistance took to the skies, armed with all they had left: old fighter jets retrofitted with Kiralan weaponry and makeshift EMP disruptors. They dove into the fray, dodging Zakarith fire, targeting key vessels within the now vulnerable fleet. The battle was chaotic, with ships bursting into flames and explosions tearing apart the Zakarith's ranks. But in the midst of the chaos, a final target appeared: the Titan of stars, Karnok's flagship, a massive fortress of destruction. Tanaka led a squadron of fighter pilots toward the flagship. Captain Lila Grant, his second in command, was one of the best pilots left on Earth. Her hands were steady on the controls as she banked her fighter ship toward the heart of the enemy's command vessel. As the resistance closed in on the flagship, Karnok realized his empire was crumbling. With one final, desperate move, he ordered his ship to self-destruct, taking Earth's last hope with it. But Earth's fighters had anticipated this move. As the Titan of stars collapsed in a fiery explosion, the shockwave carried with it the knowledge that the Zakarith had been defeated. Earth's will had proved stronger than even the most powerful empire in the galaxy. In the aftermath of the battle, humanity's victory was bittersweet. The cost had been unimaginable, but Earth had stood strong. The Zakarith's invasion had been halted not by superior technology, but by the ingenuity, unity, and relentless spirit of the people of Earth. As Earth began to rebuild, it looked to the stars with renewed determination. The message was clear to any civilization that might dare to threaten humanity: Earth would not bow to invaders. The Zakarith fleet was overwhelming, an unstoppable force bearing down on Earth. From orbit, the sheer size of the ships was enough to inspire terror in the hearts of even the bravest humans. The Titan of stars, the Zakarith flagship, was larger than any human vessel ever conceived, its jagged, black hull gleaming with energy that crackled and hummed. It was a sight that chilled the soul, a testament to the empire that had laid waste to hundreds of worlds, now setting its sights on Earth. For General Samuel Drayton, the leader of Earth's military response, it was a personal nightmare. He had spent his entire career preparing for military threats, but never in his worst nightmares had he imagined something like this. The reports were flooding in. Every major military installation on the planet was crippled. The Zakarith had deployed energy weapons that disabled Earth's communications systems in seconds, leaving them blind and vulnerable. "We've been hit hard, General," said Lieutenant McAllister, Drayton's trusted aide, as he entered the war room. He was breathless, his face grim. "Cities are already falling. They've deployed massive shock waves, decimating everything in their path." Drayton had been in tough situations before: wartime strategies, global crises, but this was something entirely different. He stood at the center of a massive digital map showing key areas of the planet, each glowing red as reports of destruction came in. The invasion was not just a military operation, it was an extinction-level event. "Lieutenant, get me an update from Fort Phoenix. That's our last line of defense." "We need eyes on the ground," Drayton barked, his voice strained with exhaustion. The soldiers and strategists crowded around, their faces drawn, as they watched the streams of data flash across the screens. Meanwhile, Drayton could feel his pulse quicken. If Earth didn't fight back now, it would be too late. "Sir, we have confirmed reports from multiple nations," McAllister continued. "The Zakarith are using some kind of EMP technology that disrupts all power systems. It's like they know exactly how to disable us." Drayton turned to face his colleagues. "Then we fight back with what we have left. We're not going to let them take this planet without a fight." Back aboard the Titan of Stars, Commander Karnoke watched Earth's chaos unfold with a cold, detached gaze. The invasion had begun as planned, with devastating effect. The shockwave weapons had obliterated major cities, sending humanity into disarray. Now, the Zakarith fleet was positioned to deliver the final blow. The planets that had fallen before Earth had put up some resistance, but no force had ever truly challenged the might of the Zakarith. Karnoke was not one to underestimate his enemies, however. He knew Earth's capacity for survival. In his long career as a commander, he had witnessed worlds rise up in defiance, only to be crushed under the weight of Zakarith might. Earth would be no different, and yet there was something about the reports coming from his fleet's reconnaissance teams that bothered him. There was a flicker of resistance from the humans, a last-ditch effort to strike back. "I want all readings from the Earthling defense systems," Karnoke ordered, his voice cold as ice. "We will not let them take this moment from us." General Zalzar, his second-in-command, nodded and turned toward the console, his metal eyes reflecting the digital data pouring in. "Commander," Zalzar said, after a moment of contemplation. "It seems the humans are attempting to develop a counterattack using old technology. They're trying to gather all their remaining resources and launch a coordinated strike." Karnoke's lip curled in disdain. "A futile effort. We will destroy them completely." He turned to his tactical officer. "Initiate the final phase. Begin preparation for the subjugation. I want Earth to see the full extent of Zakarith power." But deep down, Karnoke was aware he had seen this before. The human race had a tenacity that defied logic. It was that very same tenacity that had earned Earth the Zakarith's full attention. On Earth, humanity's last hope rested with a small group of engineers, scientists, and military strategists. Dr. Evelyn Collins, the brilliant physicist from Shawnee Observatory, had made a breakthrough. The Zakarith's advanced shield technology, while powerful, had a vulnerability of frequency that, if disrupted, could momentarily disable their defensive systems. Earth's defense network, crippled by the Zakarith's first strike, now had to rely on this single vulnerability. Working around the clock, Dr. Collins, Ray Tanaka, a seasoned military strategist, and a team of engineers began to build a weapon that could exploit this weakness. The EMP weapon would be humanity's only chance at taking down the Zakarith fleet, even if only temporarily. In a hidden underground lab, Dr. Collins sat hunched over a desk, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. Her tired eyes reflected the strain of the past days, the weight of the future pressing down on her. Beside her, Tanaka stared at the schematics, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This weapon needs to be perfect, Evelyn," Tanaka said quietly, almost to himself. "We're running out of time. The Zakarith have already devastated most of our military capabilities. We're all that's left." "I know," Dr. Collins said softly. She paused for a moment, then turned to face him. "But I've seen the data. The Zakarith may be technologically superior, but they've overlooked this. It's our one shot." As the Zakarith continued their rampage, another unexpected turn of events unfolded. The Kirillans, a peaceful species who had narrowly escaped the Zakarith's previous conquest, had arrived in the solar system. The Kirillans, once conquerors themselves, had barely escaped the Zakarith's wrath on their own world. Now, they had fled to Earth, seeking refuge and offering assistance. Asha Valin, a Kiralan envoy, met with Dr. Collins and Tanaka in the underground facility. She was tall and slender, her pale blue skin glowing slightly in the dim light. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the urgency of the situation. "We know the Zakarith better than anyone," Asha began, her voice cool yet filled with an undercurrent of urgency. "We may have lost our home, but we haven't lost everything. We want to help." Dr. Collins looked at her skeptically. The Kirillans' advanced technology was impressive, but would they truly be willing to share their knowledge with Earth? The humans were at a disadvantage, but the Kirillans had nothing left to lose. "You'll help us build the EMP weapon?" Tanaka asked, his voice filled with a hint of disbelief. Asha nodded. "Yes. Our technology is not as advanced as theirs in some areas, but we have data strategies on how they operate. We can teach you how to fine-tune this EMP device. Together, we stand a better chance." For the first time in days, Dr. Collins felt a glimmer of hope. But it was fleeting. "There's still a lot we need to do," she said quietly, "but with your help, we might just have a chance." Asha stepped forward, her expression unwavering. "We will not let Earth fall. Not while we still have the strength to fight." The clock was ticking down. As the Zakarith began to position their ships for a final assault, Earth's resistance mounted its last-ditch effort. The EMP device, now complete, was being transported to one of Earth's last functioning military bases, Fort Phoenix, a heavily fortified underground complex located in the American Rockies. The Zakarith were moving quickly, positioning their fleet over major population centers. It was clear that they intended to wipe out any human resistance in one final, catastrophic blow. Earth had only one chance to strike back. General Drayton stood at the command center in Fort Phoenix, his face hard and determined. He was no longer just a general, he was the symbol of humanity's refusal to be crushed. The future of the entire species rested on his shoulders. "We can't afford to fail," he said to Tanaka and Dr. Collins, who were standing beside him. "This is it. If we don't succeed in disabling their fleet now, it's over." Tanaka nodded. "We know the stakes. The EMP will give us a short window to strike, but we'll need every pilot we have left to take advantage of it. I'll coordinate the fighters." Dr. Collins met his gaze. "I'll be here, monitoring the EMP. Once the shield goes down, you'll have only minutes to hit them where it counts." The moment of truth arrived. The EMP weapon, positioned deep within Fort Phoenix's underground core, was activated. The world held its breath as a massive pulse of electromagnetic energy shot up into the sky, directly targeting the Zakarith fleet. The result was immediate. Zakarith shields across the fleet flickered, then went dark. The Titan of Stars and its supporting vessels suddenly became vulnerable. Ray Tanaka, in a fighter jet, led the charge. With the Zakarith shields down, Earth's remaining military forces launched a counterattack, their ships swarming toward the massive Zakarith fleet. The final battle for Earth had begun. If you're loving what you're watching and want to see even more exciting videos on Voidverse Chronicles, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.